Okay, so now we're at that part where Zoom and Facebook Live conspire to lie to me and tell me that they're setting it up, but that I'm not actually on, but I am in fact live. Yes, and now I'm genuinely live, even according to them. So hello, and welcome to Tea and New Book Tuesday. I'm Lisa. Today we're going to talk about books, surprisingly enough, that are coming to Mobile Public Library. And I got to figure out, oh, this is what happens when I get on Zoom too early. I was on Zoom, getting ready for the show, checking my lipstick and whatnot. And by checking, I mean putting it on. And listening to a YouTube video where Dan Levy of Schitt's Creek explains to his father, who's also on Schitt's Creek, Eugene Levy, different youth slang like bae and TBH, and it was pretty funny. But it also is not a book mood, but I now need to get into my book mood. I also need to get into technology mood and figure out how to use all of the widgets so that I can share my screen with you. Yes, and what you're seeing is Facebook, which is not what I wanted. This is what I want. Tea and New Book Tuesday for March 16th. There we go. All right. Today we are going to talk about some ladies nonfiction, ladies-ish, just some nonfiction I found interesting and has sort of loosely things to do with one another, and some romance. Got some exciting titles coming up, but we also have an exciting event, which will be, did I write down when this event is? I think it's this Saturday. But you know what? Let's go ahead and look it up real quick so I don't tell you the wrong thing. We are having story time under the Oaks. It will be here at Ben May, Maine. I think Charlotte's going to do it on Scott Street, which is a really nice place to have events because that end of Scott Street is really quiet. Yes, Saturday, March 30th. It doesn't give the exact time. Does it give the time? It doesn't give the time. I don't know why. But you can join us in person, weather permitting, or on Zoom or Facebook Live. And we'll also feature the special guest, Dr. Clavicle of the Medical Museum. So that should be fun. We'll have another movie in a couple weeks too. Moving on to today's giveaway. Today's giveaway is going to be big. It's one of the bigger ones I've done in a while. I am going to go ahead and give away 5 different historical novels. They're from all different time periods, different authors, different subjects, but a lot of them I've heard are good. This one doesn't come out until April 20th. The 3 of them came out in March, and then this one came out back in January. But if you would like to win any of these historical novels, go ahead and put I want to win and your MPL location for pickup in the comments down below. I'll choose the winner on Friday. All right, yes. 5 lucky winners with 5 lucky novels. And let's move on to the nonfiction. Let me get a sip of my tea. I am drinking my vanilla bean macaron again, which I'm sure you're tired of hearing about by now. I did not start this Facebook Live event every week so that I could talk about Tazo. I mean, they're fine, but you know, they're not paying me, so who cares? Moving on. Sensational, The Hidden History of America's Girl Stunt Reporters by Kim Todd. So at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century, there were a lot of these female reporters who began putting themselves in dangerous situations to expose problems and failed promises in our society. They, one of them pretended to be insane, or I think possibly more than one, so that she could expose what was going on in the local asylum. That sounds terrifying. One of them fainted in the street to see how their hospital system was working or wasn't. Several of them entered factories, all different kinds of factories, so they could expose labor conditions and child labor and things like that. This book covers beginning all the way back with yellow journalism, going all the way through to the present, at the effect that this kind of reporting has had on modern journalism. There's too few early reviews to go into it, but there were favorable reviews in the library publications that help us pick out books. And I thought it looked really interesting. There's, my screen sharing is paused. Why? Wait. But I don't want to share. Okay. Having technical difficulties. But I don't want to share that one. Okay. Sorry. According to this, you're not seeing the screen that I'm seeing. I want you to see this one. That one. Okay. I think I got it fixed. So you can see the lovely, sensational book cover. Yeah, I've read about these female reporters and bits and pieces here and there, and it is always a pretty interesting story. So I think this is probably going to be an interesting book. If you're interested in sensational, it comes out on April 13th. All right, The Unfit Heiress, The Tragic Life and Scandalous Sterilization of Anne Cooper Hewitt, written by Audrey Clare Farley. This was one of those things I read. I picked it because it's a biography about someone I hadn't heard of, which those biographies can be really interesting. Since you come to it completely blind and get to find out all this stuff. But this is about a particular period in time, as arguably are many biographies, but specifically a court battle between Anne Cooper Hewitt and her mother, whose name is spelled M-A-R-Y-O-N. I assume Marion? Odd spelling for Marion, but whatever. I'm inclined to not like Marion given what she did. She wanted to deny her daughter the millions of dollars she inherited from Anne's, the millions of dollars Anne should have inherited from her father. But that will had a stipulation that she had to have children. So Marion declared her daughter feeble-minded because her daughter was, according to her, promiscuous. And that meant she was feeble-minded, which so many things wrong with that entire statement. Feeble-minded as a thing you can declare someone to be, as a thing that someone who has no obvious developmental delays would be, which it shouldn't. And also all of this based on the fact that she as an adult had relationships with other adults. But anyway, and in declaring her feeble-minded, she was then allowed to have Anne sterilized without Anne's knowledge or consent. All of this was legal under California law in the 1930s. Nice and horrifying. They're recommending this for readers of The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which is a huge hit from a few years ago, and The Phantom of Fifth Avenue, which came out a couple years ago. If you're interested in The Unfit Heiress, it comes out April 20th. All right, The Life She Wished to Live, a biography of Marjorie Keenan Rowlands, author of The Yearling. So, do I even have my notes? I do not have my notes. Let's move on. Obviously, the book's about Rowling. She won a Pulitzer Prize for The Yearling. The Yearling, which is set in Florida and gave the literary world this sort of view into a sort of swampland community with its own dialect and its own traditions and things. She was actually born in DC and raised in, I think, Wisconsin. I know it's the upper Midwest. But she had no intention of living the life that was sort of laid out for women of her generation. She had literary ambitions, and she ended up finding her voice when she moved to a place called Cross Creek, Florida. This biography talks about Rowling's life, all of her ambitions, and then after the book came out, all of the things that success brought for her, some of which were not great. Things like a failed marriage and alcoholism and an unstable financial situation. But it also writes about the community that inspired her, which is probably pretty interesting, especially if you read The Yearling. So Yeah, I don't have any early reviews, again, because we're talking about nonfiction that doesn't happen as often. But if you're interested in it, it comes out April 27th. Moving on, this is crazy. Okay, we're still in nonfiction. The Haunting of Alma Fielding by Kate Summerscale. In 1938, in the suburbs of London, a modest woman named Alma Fielding ended up at the center of an unexplained phenomena. In her home, china was flying off the shelves, stuff was disappearing and then reappearing in her hands. Mice were crawling out of her handbag, beetles were coming out of the walls out of nowhere. It was crazy. And she believed she was haunted. The chief ghost hunter from, is an actual group, the International Institute for, I think, psychical research. I've never seen this word before, but it's psychic and then AL, psychical research. He started looking into her case and ended up actively investigating it. So this is the story of that investigation. And I almost wouldn't have considered this book noteworthy. I mean, interesting if you want a real life ghost story. But this actually got the Publishers Weekly star, meaning Publishers Weekly thought this book was really good. And since it's a little out of left field, I thought that made it an interesting one to recommend. If any of you read this, let me know, tell me about it, because I'm curious about that one. I know I'm not going to get around to reading it, since the amount of nonfiction I get around to reading is pretty small. But yeah. If you're interested, it comes out April 27th. All right. I'm not going to go into this one for very long because it is exactly what it says it is. Bringing Up Book Monsters, The Joyful Way to Turn Your Child into a Fearless, Ravenous Reader by Amber and Andy Ankowski. Ankowski. I'm betting that is the name. Okay. This another one that got a starred review from Publishers Weekly, and it's essentially a book of ways to encourage your child to read and to engage with language. Not much more I can say about it other than that, but I thought you guys might be interested, and if you are, it comes out April 27th. All right, let's move on to the fiction, which we have several. We're going to start off with a couple of series updates. Okay, Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. This is book 3 in a best-selling series. The first 2 books were The Friend Zone and The Happily Ever After Playlist. This currently has a 4.33 rating on Goodreads with several hundred early reviewers, I think like 500, which is a really significant number of early reviews and a really good rating to have. So if you're interested in the series, it looks like it just keeps getting better. And I'm pretty sure we have the other 2 books as well. But Life's Too Short is going to come out on April 6th. Anchored Hearts, which is book 2 in the Keys to Love series. This series looks like it's set in the Florida Keys, which is always fun. And book 1 was called Island Affair. Book 2 got a star in Kirkus. And as I've said many times, and means less and less every time I say it, Kirkus is the review magazine for libraries that one of our librarians joked, you read it to find out why not to buy a book. They actually liked it. Since I only mention Kirkus when they like a book, I'm sure that's meaningless to you guys at this point, but it looks good. At any rate, it's coming out on April 27th. And the first one is already out, of course, and I believe we have it. The first one was Island Affair. Okay, Twice Shy. This is a standalone, so we'll go into the story. Mabel inherits a house from her aunt, and she sees this as an opportunity to start a new life, have a fresh start, so to speak. But when she arrives, she finds that the house is falling apart, which, isn't a huge surprise, but she's also not the only inheritor. The other inheritor is her aunt's handsome but grouchy groundskeeper. So now they have to compromise in order to rebuild the house, fix it, and develop some kind of a plan for this property. But of course, when they let their guards down, they may find some romance romance. There we go. This has a 4.36 rating on Goodreads from, a decent number of early readers. And Sarah Hoggle's pretty popular. Daylight savings time, you guys. I'm so tired. Anyway, if you're interested in Twice Shy, it comes out April 6th. Okay. This, I feel like, they didn't say this, which makes me think I'm wrong. But it does partly give me Bridgerton vibes. At any rate, it's called The Duke Undone. It's by Joanna Lowell. It's set in Victorian England. A painting student stumbles on a naked, unconscious man in an alley, like you do. She does the right thing. She covers him up and gets him help. But then later on, she can't stop thinking about his muscled form, so she paints it. The man in question is Anthony Philby. He is a second son of an aristocratic family, and being a second son meant that he could break free and build his own life. And then his older brother unexpectedly dies, and he inherits the title, the land, and all of the responsibility he didn't want. He still feels he has a chance to get out of this. I don't know how, presumably that's in the book. But his shot at freedom is jeopardized if there's a scandal, like, for example, if a nude painting of him were to come out. So that's our major conflict in here. This only has a handful of ratings, but they're pretty positive. And it feels very like taking discussions we have today about nude pictures and social media and things, but making it a painting in Victorian England, which could be fun. But if you're interested in The Duke Undone, it comes out on April 6th, as do so many things. Okay. Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. Ruthie has spent 6 years working at a retirement village. She's made it her life. She takes care of the residents there. She fixes things and overall just avoids stepping out of her comfort zone. Then the retirement village sells to a new owner, and he wants his lazy, handsome, tattooed son to do some fix-em-up work there. Ruthie wants to get rid of him, so her plan is to make him the assistant of two of the village's most difficult residents. These two ladies are 90 years old, a grand total of 4 feet tall, and wealthy menaces that have never kept an assistant for more than a week. So obviously, this is why Ruthie thinks she can get rid of him this way. She'll give him to these ladies. They'll annoy him to death. He'll run away. What happens instead is that he's super charming, and, even 90-year-old biddies like to be charmed every now and then. So it backfires. He's willing to go and pick up their Chanel at dry cleaning. He's willing to cut their Big Macs into bite-sized pieces like they like. And now Ruthie's stuck with him. So, yeah, my note says she doesn't account for the fact that he's willing to do what they ask, A, and B, he's charming as hell and two old ladies are only human. So this has gotten a 4-star review from a few hundred early readers. If you're interested in Second First Impressions, it comes out April 13th. All right. This is a new series. I think it's going to be the Wantons of Waverton series. It's called Someone Wanton His Way Comes by Christy Caldwell. This is about a widowed lady who, along with a couple of other widowed ladies, decide they're going to save London's debutantes from unsavory men in the peerage. One of the prominent men of the peerage wants to fight to keep these women from undoing the marriage market. The gentleman and the widow lady do in fact know each other. The gentleman introduced her to his best friend, who ended up being her husband. He regrets this, A, because he was attracted to her and he lost her, and B, because his best friend turned out to be a terrible husband. So it's these two people who are on the opposite sides of a mini culture war. They did not define the time and place, but based on this description, England in the past at some time. Also, can I just point out, maybe it's just me, but the cover says borderline erotica. There's nothing wrong with that. But, you know, it promised sexy, sexy times. The description did not promise sexy, sexy times, so I don't know what to say. And Christy Caldwell is a best-selling author of another series. It's a series called the Wicked Wallflower series. So if you're interested in something Wanton His Way Comes, it will be coming out April 20th. All right, some final thoughts. I did end up putting up all of the series installments coming out in April from the thrillers onto Goodreads. So if you want to go to Goodreads, you can peruse that list and see if your favorite series is coming out with a new installment in April. If you would like to win one of these 5 historical novels, please write "I want to win" in the comments and your MPL location for pickup. I am going to require MPL location for pickup to be in your comment in order for you to win. Sorry, my brain, I am so tired. So very tired, as are we all, but still. Because I have 5 of them to give out, and if I have to stop and, you know, text or message you back on Facebook about where you want to pick it up, and then it slows down the process horribly. So yeah, you have to have that in order to enter, but enter anytime between now and Friday. Also, if you would like our newsletter, MPL pre-orders is what it's called, and it includes a link for all of these books to our catalogs. You could just click on it and go over and put them on hold. Next week, we're probably going to talk about science fiction, horror, and fantasy, plus anything else I think you guys might like that's coming out in April. And then we're done with April already, which feels very quick. But have a great week, guys. I will see you next Tuesday.